With Big Ben having now struck 7, it's time to take the tube across to Victoria to catch my train down to Bognor Regis. Good evening from London, everyone. It's a gloriously sunny evening here in the capital, so it does seem a shame to be leaving it behind. However, hopefully the weather on the south coast and my soon-to-be home will be just as nice though. But with that, let's head to Victoria, a station that has somehow eluded featuring on the channel. Until now, that is.
This is a Circle Line train via Victoria and High Street, Kensington. The next station is St James's Park.
Victoria Station is located just a short walk away from Buckingham Palace. It's in Fare Zone 1 on the tube map and is served by the Victoria, District and Circle lines, the latter of which I arrived here on today, as well as the local buses you can see here outside the front of the station. You'll also find long distance coach services from nearby Victoria Coach Station. Now, the concourse of the station is kind of split into two zones. Dead ahead as we enter, you'll find Southern and Gatwick Express services heading towards the south coast. Southern and Gatwick Express both form part of Govia Thameslink Railway, whose brand names also include Thameslink and Great Northern. Off to the left are southeastern services, heading to the likes of Gillingham, Reigate and Dover. Now, our train hasn't quite made its way onto the main departure boards yet, but the service we'll be catching this evening is the 2005 to Portsmouth Harbour and Bognor Regis. By the way, what do you make of these new style departure boards that are becoming more and more common here in the UK? Personally, I quite like them. The colours and arrows do make it easier to find your way to the correct platform when it's time. That said though, I still think the old style boards were fine, and some people have complained that the new boards are a bit of an information overload, which I can certainly see why some people may think this. Anyway, I've got just enough time to head and get myself a drink before boarding my ride south. While I wouldn't really describe the shops on offer here at Victoria as like a shopping centre or mall, it does at least look like they've kidnapped the food court from one. For a station, the food offering is really rather good, I think. Now, as I head down to the platforms, just a quick message to say that if you want to watch my videos without ads, and without forking out for YouTube Premium, then you can do so by signing up to either my Patreon or channel members pages from just £1, $1 or €1 per month. Not only will you get ad-free access to my videos, but you'll also be helping out the channel immensely. You'll find the relevant links in the description below. Now, the platforms here at Victoria are pretty dingy. They sort of remind me of those found at Chicago's Union Station. I'm sure that anyone who's been to either of these stations gets what I mean. Anyway, Southern's fleet consists almost exclusively of these Class 377 Electrostars. These trains were built by Bombardier in Derby and first entered service with Southern in 2003 to replace the old slam door stock that they used to operate. The Class 377s have a top speed of 100 miles an hour or 160 kilometers an hour and are powered by an electrified third rail, as is very common for trains operating south of London. Right, let's get on board, shall we? For Bognor Regis, I need to travel in the rear 4 coaches of this 8-car train, as the train splits in Horsham, with the front 4 coaches continuing fast to Portsmouth. However, first, I thought I'd show you how it's possible to move between the units. These trains do actually feature a small first class section at either end of each unit, although you'd be far-fetched to find any differences from standard class, bar say the headrest denoting that this is in fact first class. You've really got to have more brass than sense to want to fork out for this. For standard class, 2 different types of seat are offered. In the front and rear coaches, the seats are exactly the same as those found in first class, being laid out in a 2+2 configuration. Now, we'll take a look at the other coaches in a bit, but for now, let's take a seat. For a commuter train, legroom is really good. Even in the bays of 4, there's still more than adequate room, even if someone is sitting opposite you. The tables are always a nice touch in my opinion, and being one of the units that's been recently refurbished, both regular and USB plug sockets can be found. You'll also find a reading light located in the luggage rack above your head. As for the seats, they're nicely cushioned and provide a more than acceptable experience, given that these trains are mainly used on shortish routes. Overall, a well-rounded and comfortable experience, but do let me know your thoughts on these seats in the comments below. However, in the meantime, let's whack up the map and see where we'll be heading this evening. We'll initially travel on the Brighton Main Line as far as 3 bridges, stopping at Clapham Junction, East Croydon and Gatwick Airport along the way. We'll then continue to Horsham where, as I mentioned earlier, the train divides. We'll then go on to make a number of stops before finally arriving into Bognor Regis at just after 10 to 10. Scheduled travel time this evening is 1 hour and 46 minutes, and will see us covering a distance of roughly 67 miles or 107 kilometers. Top speed will be 90 miles an hour or 145 kilometers an hour. And we depart London bang on time at 8:05.
1 to 4, front 4 coaches from Horsham will then continue to Barnum, Chichester, Havant, Fratton,
After crossing the Thames, we arrive at our first stop, Clapham Junction, just over 5 minutes after leaving Victoria. This is one of not just the UK's but one of Europe's busiest railway interchanges. As you might have expected, the train did get very busy for quite a while after leaving Clapham Junction. After Clapham Junction, we begin to pick up speed as we get further and further from central London. About 10 minutes later, we call at East Croydon. This is another major interchange and is also where you can change for the London trams, which I'll be covering in a separate video in a couple of weeks.
Welcome aboard the Southern service to Portsmouth Harbour and Bognor Regis. The next station is Gatwick Airport.
I must say, the sunset was rather spectacular on the evening I travelled. This is what I love about taking the train. Even a seemingly boring run-of-the-mill route such as this allows you to just sit back, relax, and take in the passing vistas. About a quarter of an hour after leaving East Croydon, we arrive at Gatwick Airport, which is of course the UK's second busiest airport after Heathrow.
Welcome Welcome aboard the Southern service to Portsmouth Harbour and Bognor Regis. The next station is Three Bridges. Please keep your bags and personal belongings.
A short time after Gatwick, we arrive at Three Bridges, which, as I touched on earlier, will be our last stop on the Brighton main line. We then go on to call at the town of Crawley, which is most notable for being home of the aforementioned Gatwick Airport.
Forward, Barnum and Bognor Regis. Please ensure you are in the correct part of the train for your journey. And for those passengers that are remaining on board.
A short time later, we arrive into Horsham, where we'll be stopped for a few minutes while the train divides, with the Portsmouth section going off ahead of us and running a fast service, with us following behind, stopping at most stations. Well, the train is now significantly less busy than it was earlier, so I think that this is now a good time to head and see what else these trains have to offer. As I touched on earlier, the middle two coaches feature a different type of seat, with these being mainly laid out in a high-density 2+3 configuration. Now obviously, these seats are quite a bit more cramped and a lot less comfortable, so I definitely recommend sitting in the two-end coaches if you can. One of the middle coaches has a couple of spaces for wheelchair users, as well as spaces for storing bicycles to the right, next to which you'll of course find the accessible toilet. Now, I was surprised at just how clean this was, and it was all working as intended, so good job, Southern. And lastly, this train is Wi-Fi enabled, although unsurprisingly, it isn't exactly fast. Wow, what a beautiful end to a lovely day. This is one of the best sunsets I've seen in a while. Just off in the distance, you can see the silhouette of Arundel Castle. The structure dates back as far as 1067, just 1 year after the Battle of Hastings. Most of the year it's open to the public, although you'll have to have deep pockets if you want to have a look around, as entry costs a whopping £25 per person.
We are now approaching Arundel. Please mind the gap between the train and the...
Our penultimate intermediate stop today is Ford. I always have to chuckle as I pass the open prison they have here, as the facility runs a cafe called Serving Time, which is exactly the sort of dad joke I can get behind. And finally, just a few miles out of Bognor, we arrive at our final calling point, Barnum. Overall, this has been a really pleasant trip. I'm always surprised at just how comfortable these seats are, and by just how much legroom they have. The only downside is that the seats in the middle coaches are quite a bit less comfortable, but overall, very good, reflected in the fact I'll be awarding Southern an 8 out of 10 for comfort. As expected though, the train was quite busy for some of the trip, particularly between Clapham Junction and Horsham. However, the train then cleared out, and there was hardly anyone left by the time we made it to Bognor, so I'd say occupancy varied on this one, between very low and high. Now, before these trains were refurbished, I would have been blasting the fact that there weren't any plug sockets. However, to have both regular and USB sockets is definitely good to see. In addition to these, I thought the toilets were well appointed and clean, and it was good to see that both wheelchair and bicycle spaces were provided. However, there was no form of onboard catering, although I wouldn't have expected this on Southern, as they only really operate shorter regional journeys. But yeah, excellent amenities overall. Now, I can remember a time when Southern were really bad for delays and cancellations, to the point where the government was considering stripping them of their franchise. However, they seem to have got their act together in recent years, reflected by the fact that 30 of the 31 services that they operated between London and Bognor Regis arrived no more than 5 minutes after their scheduled arrival time. If you're wondering, the one that didn't arrive on time arrived into Bognor 5.5 minutes late. Now, that's nearly 100% punctuality over a substantial number of services, which, needless to say, is absolutely superb. Something else that's absolutely superb in my opinion is how much I paid for my ticket. My advance single cost me just £3.95, booking about a fortnight in advance, and that's including railcard discount of about a third. Even without a railcard, the same ticket would have still only cost £6, which, needless to say, is still way cheaper than driving, and you don't even need to book that far in advance to take advantage of this fare. I've known it to still be available the night before travelling. But yeah, Southern have really blown my socks away with this one, good work. However, is this a sentiment you share with me? Be sure to let me know in the comments below. With that, welcome to Bognor Regis, where we arrive on time at just after 10 to 10. Right, that's all from me this week. In the meantime, I do hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to give it a like, comment and subscribe to the channel, as all of them help me out immensely. Special thanks as always goes to my fantastic patrons and channel members for their ongoing support. With that, all that's left for me to say is thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you all next Friday.
Ja. There you go. Ja. Oh. Are you alright? You know what'll happen.